This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, September 13th show. I provide news on everything money, fresh information, and market trends and conditions in our local economy. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast, you can call into the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com to discuss anything regarding money or to talk to any of the guests that I have in studio. And in studio right now, I have Vincent Humphrey, attorney with Barrera Legal Group, and I also have attorney John Barrera, owner of Barrera Legal Group, and your personal property and the effects that they may have in a divorce is what we're going to talk about. Thank you, Vincent, so much for coming in, and John, thanks for hanging out on the phone with us.
Thanks for having us today.
And a little background. Let's start out with Vincent being the first person in his family to attend college. Vincent continues to give back to his community as a zealous advocate. His passion revolves around helping those in need and serving those who would go unnoticed. Vincent practices in the arenas of criminal, family, civil, immigration, and personal injury law. He is also currently the chair of the Washington Young Lawyers Committee. And John is head of the firm's immigration and criminal defense practice. John's desire is to practice law was developed through his upbringing in Queens, New York, where he observed how important knowledge of the legal world was to protect an individual's right and interests. John became inspired to help individuals fight to protect their rights and interests, and John has a high success rate representing numerous clients in government federal agency proceedings, including immigration courts around the United States. So let's go ahead and start out. Vincent, I want to talk about what the legal grounds for divorce in Washington State. Let's just start it out with that.
Sure. And again, thanks for having me on the show today,
Of course.
So what are the legal grounds for divorce? Many people come into our office and want to talk about a surrounding circumstance in regards to what may have happened or what has led up to the divorce. But simply, based on the Washington State Revised Code, this is in Title 26. So the chapter is 26.09.030. I promise not to try to bore you, but the only legal grounds for divorce in the state of Washington is that the marriage is irretrievably broken.
Okay.
So we have what's considered a no-fault state. So it's not a situation where if something happens, some action taken by one spouse or one partner that doesn't trigger, in terms of the eyes of the law in this state, a cause for divorce. Now, those things might support your petition or your initial filing, and those things are can come into the contemplation of the court, either the judge or the commissioner, but simply it's that the marriage is irretrievably broken. Got
it. So what are the main financial aspects of a divorce?
There are all sorts. To name some of the big ones, if there are children involved, we've got child support that may or may not come in, spousal support, alimony, or maintenance. All three of those mean the exact same thing. So alimony, spousal support, or maintenance. Those of you that may be listening may have heard all of those terms, but it all kind of means the same thing. And that goes into the standard of living for, again, spouse or registered domestic partner. And so those are some of the few things. And then obviously any property division that you might have.
Yep.
And that is a huge one that I'm sure we're going to get into a little bit later. But
yeah, I'm excited, definitely excited to get into that. So I know that Washington State Community Property, Vincent, state, and can you explain to my listeners what a community property state really means?
Sure. Community property is property that is acquired after the date of your marriage or after the registration of a domestic partnership by either domestic partner or husband or wife or both. I'll cite the code, and that's from the Washington State Revised Code. Again, Chapter 26.16. So simply stated, that means that all property that you have gained, acquired, bought, purchased, however you have gotten that from the date of that the marriage or registration of your domestic partnership becomes property of the community. And so I guess that's it in a nutshell, if I'll say. I mean, there's other legal things that go into that, but simply from the code, community property is property acquired after that date.
Okay, so are most states community property states, Vincent, or...
No. Currently, there are only 9 states.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Out of all of them, there's only 9 states that are community property states. And for those of you that are tuning in, they are Arizona, California, Idaho, Louisiana, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, the great state of Washington, where I live, as well as Wisconsin. So those are the only states that are at this time community property states. There are some states that have kind of a hybrid situation, like Alaska, but in terms of just straight community property states, these are the ones that are there.
All right. So how do I know which assets are separate property and which ones are actually community property?
Okay. So a good way to think about community property versus separate property. Separate property is everything that you had before. So if you had a certain asset, let's say it was a home or a car or a boat or an expensive piece of jewelry that you had before coming together as husband or wife or as domestic partners, even after you get married, it continues to remain separate property. What does that mean? That means that in the event of a divorce, that property is yours. Now, there are, I guess I'll throw in caveats. As lawyers, we like to always make sure that we're representing...
Some exceptions there.
Oh, they're always there. They're always there. And so some of the things to be careful of if you're considering a divorce or even considering getting married is that the characterization of your property as separate, let's say it was a certain amount of money that was given to you. What the courts are going to look at is to see, well, did you keep that separate? Did you then, after it was a gift, did you put it into a joint bank account and then you spent some and then they put some in? And then the word is it traceable? Is there a way that a court can look and say, this money here in this account was yours separately, or was it commingled? And that's when you need an attorney
That
involved.
makes total sense. And I know traceable and paper trail because we do a lot of that in our arena as far as mortgages. So just keep all your documentation and be really smart. And if this is a concern, then you want to make sure that you can paper trail and go back and trace that money has not gone into a joint asset in some fashion. So what if a family gives... one of my listeners a large gift, and they're putting it together with a spouse or a partner. So that's what we're talking about is making sure that they're keeping that separate. Correct?
Absolutely. So if you're married or in a domestic partnership, and a grandmother, or an aunt, an uncle, or a friend decides to give you something from their will or something that they want to give specifically to you, this individual. The law has it that all gifts or inheritances that come in during that time period will stay your separate property. It's yours.
During the time period, during the marriage.
Yes.
So it doesn't need to be before. Okay. Wow. Yes. I didn't realize that.
So that's a little wrinkle, and a lot of people don't realize. They might have the distinction that, well, before I was married, that's mine.
Yes.
But after you get married, if a family member or somebody gives you a gift, and it's an inheritance, it will still be considered your separate property.
And again, keeping that totally separate, then you don't want to mingle that with any of the other. If you're going to go purchase a home and you received a gift after being married, for 5 years, if you had any concerns, you just wouldn't want that gift to be participating in the down payment for that new home, correct?
Correct.
Makes total sense.
If you want to maintain its characterization as separate.
So how is a property handled in other states, Vincent?
So in other states that aren't community property states, the courts look at making what's considered an equitable distribution of the property and assets. So there's a myriad of factors and different things that they have, such as the income of both spouses or partners, the length of the marriage, their standard of living, the tax consequences for one spouse versus the other. All of these things are factors that come in these other states. And that's not to say that even in Washington or Idaho or community property states that the courts don't consider those things. But at the outset, in Washington, we're community property. So in states that don't have that designation, they are weighing those other factors more heavily. Got it.
And what if I purchase a property with separate funds that I had prior to the marriage or domestic partnership?
As I was saying earlier, if you're using separate funds and you have that documented and you have that characterization as airtight as you can, it still remains separate property. So if you get a gift of money and you decide to buy a car with that money or inheritance, that particular car, or let's say you use it to make a down payment for a house, it will remain that characterization of separate property.
Okay. And what are some of the tax implications that I should be aware of for my property with the value going up or down?
All right. So
or I should say going up. There's no issues with the property value going down.
Right. So some of the things that you want to consider are capital gains taxes if your house is appreciated.
Okay.
There's long-term gains, short-term gains. I won't go into that. But there's also things you need to consider, such as your investment properties, mutual funds that you might have, investment accounts, other assets that may have appreciated in value. There might be a capital gains attachment to that. And so it's to your supreme benefit to have all of your property, and I would suggest this to everybody that's listening, to have your property analyzed. So that way you know the risk if you're contemplating a divorce or if you're in the middle of a divorce, to have these things in your mind. How much is your property worth? What is the appreciation on it since you have been married? And is it characterized as community property or is it separate property? Having that knowledge either while you're in the process or before the process can be very beneficial. And I know I've been doing a lot of talking. John, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well,
I forgot you were there, John.
No, trying to pay attention, and very important information that Vincent's talking about.
Yes.
Just to highlight some points, the documentation is so important because you get a lot of folks don't imagine getting into these entanglements, when they mingle assets and property and everything. And, just proper documentation gets you out of a lot of issues that could go, that may go against you, So pretty much emphasize that, and just, knowledge, and being empowered to be educated about, how to deal with these disputes or these possible issues is so important. Don't take for granted that, that these legal issues can be complex. I mean, even though they look simple at first, they can become complicated. So don't hesitate to come and talk to an attorney and become educated. At the very least, if you don't hire the attorney, you at least get a better understanding of what your legal grounds are and make better decisions on how to handle these legal issues in the future.
Totally agree. And that's why I started the show, John, and that's why it's called the Money Hour. It's everything regarding my listeners' money, and there are experts in every arena regarding your finances, and it's getting the expert opinion and advice. And you may think you know what's happening in law. You may think you know what's happening when it comes to your taxes or how to invest, but the reality of it is we can be good at maybe one thing, really good at one thing and not more than one. So you got to go to the experts for everything else. John and Vincent, thank you so much for coming into studio. I really appreciate it. And I had so many more questions that I wanted to actually ask you, but time is never enough. So definitely we'll have to have you back in studio. Thank you.
I would love that.
Love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tina.
Okay. And this is your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, signing off for the day. Enjoy your weekend, because I know that you're going to, and you're either listening to the show on Saturday or rebroadcast on Sunday, but it's an awesome day regardless this weekend. And again, love living in Seattle. Let's take advantage of it before the season change comes up. I will be here and look forward to talking with you more about money next Saturday right here on 1150 AM KKNW.